Welcome, everybody, to what is this, episode 13 of Dual Universe Explorers. Dual Universe Explorers is a group of players from the forums who have come together every week for the past, I guess this is 13 weeks now, 13 weeks straight, talking about Dual Universe every weekend. We talk about everything from Twitter, Facebook, videos, anything that's been released, we try to cover. And, mainly we just, for lack of a better word, we just BS about the game. And just, come up with hypotheticals about what we think the game's going to be like. And I guess we have fun doing that. And I just want to make a reminder here, this is why we do this little intro, that we are not affiliated with NovaQuark. We're not employees of NovaQuark. We're not paid by them. We just do this because of our love for the game, or I suppose the idea of the game. And with that being said, I'd like to introduce the rest of our people tonight. Guys, you here with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yes, we are.
Here.
Welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
Don't everybody speak up at once.
Okay, first of all, introductions. I'm Wardian, resident space wizard.
This is Wilkes.
Nazareth.
And that was Wilkes, Nazareth, and Wardian. I don't know, you guys want to start out with a discussion, or do you, how do we want to do this tonight? I know that there was talk of just throwing up the AMA and then hitting up discussions after the AMA video.
I was thinking we do some basic news first, such as the Kickstarter news.
All right, yeah.
Okay. The Kickstarter currently is at 5,332 backers and $401,865. That's USD.
It went up just as you were saying that.
Not on my screen. My screen's bugged.
I take it back. It just went down. Never mind.
Wow, we're having a very interesting stream. Any other news that we wanted to cover?
I don't know if we mentioned this last week. We have another organization in Dual Universe that has 100 members plus.
Really? What is this organization?
I forget. I think it's Terran Union. I mean, not Terran Union. I'll still check.
Sounds like they're in direct competition with Raptor Squad. This is unacceptable. They must be destroyed when the game comes out.
Can I find a nice hole to live in?
For what purpose?
To stay out of everything that's going to happen day one on the servers.
No, afraid not. Because we're all capable of digging you out of the hole.
Emergent gameplay. I'll dig a bigger hole.
Exactly.
So we did get a new music sample over the past week for the 4,000 backer milestone. So, anyone want to talk about music? Because I love their music.
More music?
Yep. Track 11, I believe it was.
I have not heard it yet. There's so many new things coming out.
Yeah, they're pretty on top of their output. They're outputting so much that their concepts of concepts is what they're telling us they have.
Some people say that's a little dangerous. Gets people a little too hyped up for the game.
Well, as long as they don't go a No Man's Sky route and just say, yeah, you'll be able to do this and just not ever do it.
Well, as opposed to No Man's Sky, I think NovaQuark has not been afraid to say no at certain points. To say no, that's not going to happen. We're not going to appeal to everyone. No.
Yeah, like ship physics and smashing into each other in the video, the AMA video we're going to at least talk about later, no ship collision physics breaking things. And no wheels for at least the start. They are very well about saying, we'd like to, we'll look into it, but no, for now. And he seems very, very managing of what he says yes or no to.
Yeah, he's managing expectations. And more often than not, he will preface anything he says with, and this is our vision for what we'd like the game to be. It's not going to be like this at release.
Yeah. Just so no one can say, well, you said this. No, he really didn't.
Well, fair enough.
Oh, what is it called? Stretch goals are announced. At least 2 of them are.
What were those stretch goals?
Those stretch goals were page loading.
I believe one was first.
Yeah, 600,000 is construct versus construct combat, which is combat-oriented elements such as turrets, shields, etc. And 650,000 advanced character customization upgrade 1. Helmet can be removed, choice of character face and hair. I really want that second one.
The ability to make your own avatar look unique. Yeah, that's a good stretch goal.
Yeah, and he said that more will be announced closer to the goal number.
Well, they are pretty close to the goal. Have you guys seen the results lately? Right now, I'm looking at
I have.
360,000 euros, 72% of the way through.
Yeah, the one thing that I always look about when I see Kickstarter goals is that's actually an incentive to try and get people to, sign up for the Kickstarter. When you don't have any goals, you don't really have that incentive. Announcing that we're going to have a goal when you get close to it doesn't really draw more people towards it.
It's that having them published early that draws in the people, draws in attention, and it makes you want those new things.
Right, and generally that's how Kickstarters work. You want to you see certain things that you want, and people start backing it to try and get those things.
Man, I had a dream last night that I went and I spent like another $200 on Kickstarter, so I have to make sure that I didn't actually go spend another $200 on Kickstarter.
Well, you've already spent more money than I have on its Kickstarter.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I know right now I'm debating going to Curium right now, and I am seriously considering it.
Well, hold it. Don't do it now. If you were going to make that decision, I would do it in the last 2 days. Like, I would look at what the total is going to be, because, if Akirium, I think, carries a lot of weight behind it. Someone sees someone buy an Akirium, and then you get a lot of other donators that kind of pile in behind them. I think that is something that should be held off until, the last couple of days. I mean, just to follow the Kickstarter curve, too. The U shape that it's supposed to follow.
Well, that's true, but, I mean, yes, it follows a U shape, and that's when it goes good, a Kickstarter. But just as often, I've seen Kickstarters where, they seem to be doing good, and then they don't quite meet the goals that most of the people wanted. And then so all of a sudden, people start pulling their pledges right at the very end. And that's another trend that could happen. And I don't see that happening in this one so far because they are so reluctant to give fully stated Kickstarter goals and such. But
and the goals
it's
came
a possibility.
In kind of late enough that I think a lot of the momentum wasn't driven by those stretch goals.
Yeah, so I'm not too worried about that. It's just one of those things that I keep in the back of my mind and I recognize it's a possibility.
We only have, like we've already said, that $150,000 to go, and I was expecting at least a couple more days to hit 400,000, but it's just absolutely cruising. So I have very little that will reach the base goal, and possibly somewhere between base goal and the 600,000 is where I see it landing.
I also foresee them afterwards, possibly selling packages afterwards, at least for more money than Kickstarter. Like, honestly, who would be opposed to them selling alpha access after Kickstarter for, I don't know, like 50% more than it cost on Kickstarter?
Oh, absolutely. That would be a great idea. Especially because that's how most or if they don't have Kickstarter games go. Like on a lot of Steam games, you buy into alpha, and you're buying into alpha.
I think that it makes sense for. I know a lot of people are opposed to $100, $150 alpha, but I think that it makes sense because you kind of have to take into account, like, if you make it a cheap Kickstarter, like, or a cheap early access, like $20, and you get alpha access, then you get a lot more people exposed to your game, and that exposes the potential for people to complain about the game in the state at which, like, it really shouldn't be reviewed at. Like, if you have 10,000, 20,000 people all come into alpha at the same time, I think that the impact may be worse off for it later down the line. I think, like, an example of this would be like DayZ. Like, DayZ released early access. DayZ Standalone released early access so soon that so many people have bought into it, and now it's, it does say pretty clearly that it's a early access game, but a lot of people see it as a, quote, released game because it was so inexpensive that the exposure was a lot greater.
Well, there's that. There's also the whole open beta times as well, and some games never seem to go beyond open beta. Warframe, for instance, seems to be just open beta forever. It's still registered as open beta.
Yeah, I really like the high buy-in to the alpha because it puts people there who are there to test, there to give feedback, not there to get on a trend, not there just because it's a space game. We need alpha players.
Barrier.
Yeah,
it's like a barrier between people who otherwise just want to play the game and people who go into it knowing what they're getting out of it. When you spend $150 on it, you should have the expectation, like, you should know what you're buying for $150 versus someone just spending $20 to $30 in a game, like, they're just buying any other game on Steam.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's definitely a statement of intent and pretty much a statement of commitment.
Yeah.
We're not going to see this. I guess we're not going to see this ever happen again for this game after the Kickstarter.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, it's never going to be as obvious as this. Very few people are going to be able to sit there and say that I'm as dedicated to this game as the guy that, bought a Curium pledge.
I feel like Curium people are just going to be such staples in the community at launch.
I don't. All four of them?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't see that happening because, even if you got all the Curium founder packs bought up in the Kickstarter, that's 10 people.
I think the staples in the community are going to be everybody from Ruby on up. All the lifetime subscription people and higher, I think, are going to be the people who are really around.
I want that one so bad.
Speaking on the subject of lifetime subscription, it makes me wonder this, if they will also go down the EVE Online route of opening up a character bazaar eventually on the forum, and what those lifetime sub accounts might actually be worth.
I think that the account will be worth something, but the characters won't actually be. Like, I don't think that if you sell a character that the lifetime subscription would go with it, but if you sold your account, it would.
Then again, that makes me wonder, didn't they say and specify that it would only be one character per account?
No.
No?
I thought that they said the opposite.
Well, I thought thought I heard that somewhere. I guess I could be wrong.
Did they? Does anybody else know?
I believe you're going to have going to be able to have more than one character per account.
Now, don't quote me on that. Like, I thought I remember reading that they said that there would be multiple. You could have multiple characters. But I think that now I'm probably just making stuff up here, but I think that the end result of that would be you're only training on skills on one character at a time, not multiple characters.
I haven't heard it either way, but makes sense that if you do have more, the penalty is you're going to have only so much time to play each character and skills.
All I know is that I stopped talking about having multiple characters on the forums after the backlash of my multi-boxing thread.
Well, you're always going to have people that feel passionate about it one way or another.
Yeah, well, I think that that's a good way of looking at the forums and anything in general right now, is that a lot of the topics are there because people are passionate enough to talk about them before there's even a game with those things in them. So, I mean, any of the topics that you're going to see on the forums, I think are going to be passionate topics, and things are going to get heated about it, simply because there's some few things to get heated about.
Yeah, and people need to realize what pre-alpha really means. It means they're still designing 90% of the game. And you can, if just by watching any video, you can tell they're still in the design phase.
Yeah, you're not there to play the game. You're there to help bug test, help design, and give ideas and concepts for features that they could use or adapt to the game, and several other things.
Well, even putting that aside, the one thing that I always have to do is I have to keep an open mind about the way a lot of these things are viewed. Just because this game is not 2.0 or whatever game that you are thinking of. This game, has elements of Space Engineers. It's not Space Engineers. It has elements of Eve. It's not Eve. I mean, some of the things that we were going to be able to do in those games, we just cannot do in this game, just because the way the game plays. I mean, it's a voxel-based building game. Yes, that's going to change what I can or cannot do to other people. I mean, earlier on in some of the earlier threads posted on the forum, people talked about like wanting their characters to be, just ragdolled and laying on the ground, like in some of those survival games, like Savage Lands, for instance. And they're like, yeah, that's a cool idea. And then I myself and some others pointed out, well, not so much in a game where I can just find your body and then just bury you under tons of dirt. There are far further reaching complications that each one of these things has that we have to keep in mind, and that we may not even foresee until much later.
Yeah, every element that you think is from every game for inspiration or just for quoting purposeless balances and affects every other element in the game entirely. And this new kind of thing of that single shard universe creates a whole bunch of, I guess, scales. Because
it's infinitely more complex than we are capable of ascertaining at this time.
Yeah, we'll go with that answer.
Although it's not necessarily the first time that a single game economy has been done.
Very true, but keeping that in mind, like some of the things that other people have talking about, like for single game economies, some people said, well, the marketplaces, are they going to be attackable? If they are attackable, that introduces a whole new complexity to the game that they may not be able to handle. I mean, there's a reason why certain games have things the way they are, because it works for that game. They haven't yet found out what's going to work for this game yet. So a lot of those times, I hate to say it, but it's like the Magic 8 Ball answer, reply hazy, ask again later.
Yeah. Pre-alpha. Talk to us when we're done with alpha. We can tell you a lot more about solid things. So,
No. Talk to us
more
before
like
that. I can
talk to
I can
us.
explore those ideas.
Talk to us about 5 years from now, and we'll be able to tell you all about it.
Oh yeah, we'll be able to lay it all out. This is what Dual Universe is, and we're still going to be getting expansion packs, hopefully.
I think that even in 5 years, Dual Universe will be hard to explain because it will be changing so fast. Not changing in terms of going downhill, but I mean changing in terms of new features and the dynamics of the game changing so often that it's really hard to explain what it is.
Yeah, not to mention the geopolitical systems that will be in there 5 years down the road.
I mean, think about it. It's like Eve. How many people can really describe what Eve is very quickly without just joking about it? Can you really describe what the game is?
No. There's YouTubers even that try to. They can't.
I can only explain from outside, so no.
Well, I think the complexity that comes with Eve and trying to describe it is because so many people get so many different things out of the game. Eve encompasses so many different things that you can do that what one person gets out of the game is not necessarily the same as what another person gets out of the game. There's a guy that pretty much rules the economy in Eve.
I think that'll pretty much apply to Dual Universe too, that so many people are going to get so many different things out of it because it's being made for, several different audiences, that it will be hard to describe what the game is, which is, I think, why it's hard now to describe what the game is.
Yeah, just think of a builder to a combat person. I like building in games. A lot of people will like exploring in this game. A lot of people will like combat. They're probably not going to use their skill tree on creation. So they're going to buy my creation. I'm going to get creation out of it. They're going to get exploration out of it. Everything is connected and detached from everything else. That's a really crappy way of putting that, but that's how these games are.
I think you're trying to think of a system of supply and demand. Would I be correct in that?
Yes and no. Yes, in the fact that it will evolve to that, but it's simpler than that. It's just, I like building, other people can't or don't like building, and so they'll play their way, I'll play my way, and we'll have completely different views on the game.
Do you guys see on Kickstarter that they're actually over $400,000?
Yes, I have.
It's gone up almost $1,000, almost $1,000 since we've been sitting here.
Nice.
I'm going to take credit for that.
You go right ahead.
Thank you, Wardian, for buying an Emerald Pack.
Now buy us all one.
I almost wonder if our Something Awful forums post has helped some. I mean, it has had over 3,000 page views in 4 days. If you ignore most of the comments, we've even picked up a few vendors on the Something Awful forum that actually support the idea of the game.
Really? I thought that was just your alts.
Now, I am not going to spend money on alts.
Speaking of alts, I guess I forgot to ask this question. This question has never really been brought up again on the topic of alts. If you'd be able to own multiple accounts.
To be honest, I'm not even sure on that.
Well,
I don't think they've ever answered that question.
Technically, Neo has multiple accounts. Neo was Safi, wasn't he?
I think Neo just changed their name.
No. Neo is Safi. They're 2 accounts. He's got 2 accounts.
Well, for the forums, yeah, you can have multiple accounts on the forums. I know that's for certain.
But he also bought 2 Emerald packs. So wouldn't that mean that he has 2 accounts now? What happens if you buy multiple Kickstarters? Like if I went and I bought another Emerald pack, what would happen to my other one? I'm thinking about buying another Ruby pack just to have 2 accounts with lifetime subscriptions.
You fund the game that much more.
Do you end up with 2 accounts? Is it transferable? I don't.
Sure.
I don't know if these questions were answered. Like if.
Well, I don't think those are. I don't think because they don't exist yet. The Kickstarter accounts that you are technically buying, they haven't been assigned to anything yet.
Well, I'm also thinking because if I had alpha access, like through the forums, I was added to the alpha team. What happens if I also back on Kickstarter? Does that mean I get 2 alpha keys, and is one of those, can I give away one? I want to give away a key. That's what I'm trying to get at here.
I don't know. You should ask them.
Also, do people like streamers like us and YouTubers, will they have any key things that we can do? That should be in that question.
I'm sure that will come up as soon as, the alpha, right before the alpha access comes out. Anybody who plans on streaming, whether or not there's going to be a non-disclosure agreement and such.
There won't be. I am making that
You'd
prediction.
I think that there will be, maybe for a very short period of time.
Right. A lot of times they'll do it for alphas, but not for betas. Because in the alphas, they don't want anybody talking about, how bad this game sucks, but, it's supposed to suck. It's an alpha. You're still testing things.
I think that there will be an NDA for like the first month, maybe, and then it will be too hard to keep anybody from actually recording it. I mean, it's really hard in 2016 not to have leaked footage.
Very true.
Well, my official prediction, not official, but my personal prediction is there won't be anything, because they are showing everything now, and it's in pre-alpha. They're showing everything they have. They're telling you everything they know about the game. So I don't see an NDA coming.
I mean, it's possible. I've seen NDAs come out for games that just didn't need them. Or, they wanted, the company that was producing the game wanted specific reviews done and only wanted them done a certain way. And I point to like Shadows of Mordor as a perfect example of that. It didn't need it. It was an excellent game. And yet for some reason they were so paranoid that, anybody would give them a bad review that you weren't allowed to play it beforehand unless you're going to give them a good review.
Which kind of defeats the purpose of a review.
Yes, it does. But that's how paranoid they were about trying to keep it safe from any negative feedback.
I like how we did this backwards. We were going to go over news and then play the AMA video. Or we were going to do the video and then go over stuff.
This always happens with us.
This dragged out.
Down the rabbit hole chasing the squirrel.
Tangent after tangent after tangent. We're doing it right now.
In other news, there have been a lot of videos released this week that anybody should check out on Dual Universe's YouTube page. There's too many of them, I think, to play them all here. There's, of course, there was the God Mode video. There's the voxel manipulation video. It's a short video, but they go over like how the voxels work and everything. It's kind of just a condensed version of what you've seen before in some other videos, but I guess explained more in depth. Especially the voxel technology, people had questions about how they were able to get it to scale, and they went in depth and explained, what kind of technology they're using, what engine they're using. They showed it in a debug mode, so interesting stuff. Like I said, way too much content to play all here, but of course, You should be watching Dual Universe's YouTube, not just ours. And I don't know why anybody would be just watching ours.
Because they're dedicated and they love our news. Another video that was released this week was the open door thing that they had. A couple shots and video of that. And one of the things that was kind of odd to me is one of the people said they're shocked on how good it looks. I highly doubt that they didn't see any of the screenshots previous to going, which lets me know that graphics will be absolutely beautiful in this game. I can't wait to see a forest. I want to see a forest.
I'm sure that the game is slowly improving, every single day or every single week as they reach certain new internal milestones on the roadmap. I'm sure that even from what I saw at PAX, I'm sure that it even looked better now.
I will reserve judgment until the game's actually released. I don't know how many alphas and betas of games I've played and tested thoroughly, and then upon official release, I look at the game and go, "What did you do? Why does this game look so terrible now?"
It tells me though. So, I'll say again, I was in the alpha for EverQuest Landmark. I was one of those people who bought those Trailblazer packs because I was waiting for EverQuest Next. And I was led to believe that EverQuest Landmark would lead to EverQuest Next. Anyways, that aside, I remember when that game came out and what it was like at launch, and everybody trying to get into the servers, and how buggy it was, and even the voxel engine was buggy, and the graphics were not fantastic. And, they readily admitted that there were problems, and they were working day and night to get them fixed. But what I saw at PAX from Dual Universe, to me, looked like it was performing better than EverQuest Landmark was at Alpha. And also, there were problems. It wasn't a perfect game, but it seemed like it was fairly playable.
Wasn't the version at PAX running off of a laptop and running the server and client on a laptop?
Yeah, it was running the server and the client on the laptop. There were some pop-in issues. There were some, level of detail issues. It had to do with the distance at which level of detail was being rendered. And I'm sure also part of it played into the fact that he was moving so fast. Because he was in a debug mode, it would have been faster than you would have been able to travel in the game anyways.
I've looked at, they've talked about the Unigine 2 that they're using for the game, and everything that they're doing right now has a lot of robustness to it. A lot of times when game developers are working on a game, they're getting around the limitations of the engine that they're working with, because it's a game engine that's had something that's been built up over the years. The Unreal Tournament engine, they're on Unreal Engine 4 right now, or 5, I think they're also working with for a lot of game companies. The overall game engine is ancient. It's just had everything built upon it over and over and over and over. A lot of the things that you can do with that engine, are limited. They're on previous versions of the Unreal Tournament engine, you could only have so many key presses registered at once. And so a lot of games made with the engine at the time had a lot of context sensitivity with how you interacted with your environment. And that was how they got around it. But that's generally what happens. They're utilizing an engine where you have to get around the limitations. The Unigine has a lot more robustness to it. It doesn't have as many limitations because it's a much newer engine.
I'm sure it has limitations, but I think that, there were clearly things that it had that were better than other engines is, why the reason why they went for it. And I'm sure part of that has to do with the scale at which it can render things.
Yeah, definitely. It's the Unigine can definitely scale things at a much further distance than a lot of these other game engines can.
And the quality that can hit. It's not a big talking point for most engines, because most engines are pretty high quality, at least most of the notable ones, but just looking at some of the demos, or the benchmark thinks is just phenomenal.
One question that I would like to have for them later on, it's way too early, definitely, to ask this, is when you're standing on a planet and you're looking up into space and you see all the stars out in the sky, are all those just background star? Like, is that just background texture, or are those actual stars that you're going to be able to fly to? Will it be accurately rendered?
That has me wondering as well. I would love to see that.
That would definitely be interesting. I would love to be able to set a course like second star to the right and straight on till morning.
And 5 years later.
Sure, that too.
Brighter stars are either bigger or closer to you.
Blue stars. Does blue stars mean blue light? It's my favorite type of star. It's blue. Because
I don't know how easy that would be to do.
Yeah,
imagine not easy
well,
to do.
I imagine that I don't think they will actually be representations of actual places we can go in game, just for the simple fact that I don't think any real star system is going to be developed in game until some system like, when you send the probe there, maybe when you're sending the probe there, then it's developing the procedural generation for that star system.
Oh yeah, nothing will exist until you actually go to it.
So with that in mind, I don't see how you can sit there and say, yeah, that star's an actual place to go, and nothing is developed there until you actually go there.
Well,
because
because
that kind of interests me. Like, if you were looking at a galaxy map in the game on day one or whatever, what would it look like? You wouldn't be able to zoom into individual stars, then, would you? Because they haven't been discovered yet.
well, that can just go back to straight procedural generation. It's procedural. It's already been mapped out on what the computer is going to do. So if you say these are all the stars, they can map that because it's already been computed.
The locations for the stars are already known and in the game. They just haven't developed the planets that will spawn around them at that point.
So you actually, that makes more sense.
You may know where the stars are going to be, but you still can't get to them for the time being.
Yeah. And I hope they do the send probe which generates or renders planets, because then they can specifically update different biomes as we play the game. So we find our first new planet. It might be a forest planet. Let's just say planets have one biomes for this discussion. But you find another forest planet 5 years in, and it looks 10 times better because they've been working behind the scenes and giving you expanded packs for that generation. And that can only happen if they render the planet once you get there through their new procedural gen that they would be working on through the project.
I could see that. So when were we planning on doing that video?
Well, it's a little late for the video.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's
we passed
late.
already? Oh, wow.
Yeah, we passed that. I think we may as well hit the DAC issue. But like I said, I don't want to spend time on this because there was way too much time wasted on this issue already this week. And they answered it
I would
in a way
like to
that I thought was positive. So
I just like to put in my opinion on the thing. I don't really have an opinion. I don't see it as a big issue.
that's not putting in your opinion.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's my opinion is me. I'm stepping aside.
Well, so the reason why Yama and I have such a I'm trying to keep an open mind on the DAC issue, and I'm glad I did because they answered a lot of the things that I had concerns about, but I didn't want to go railing on them because I didn't understand. We didn't know if they understood the issue as well as they did. Yama and I both played.
They admitted that they did not think was going to be such a big deal.
Right. Yama and I both we both have played Eve, and we have both been in situations or seen situations that where having the Plex-like system was so crucial. Just recently in Eve, there's a conglomeration of people that they are planning on going to war and over this entire sector, and so they have to pay for this. I believe they're called the Imperium Exodus. Yeah, they have to pay for this, and the cost for this war is in the trillions of ISK. And so how have they paid for it? They sold Plex, all the Plexes they've been collecting over the years. Well, I'm sure they didn't sell all the Plexes, but they sold a great deal of it to pay for this war. And by selling so many, they've actually devalued it slightly. It's still quite valuable, but in their sector of space, it's not nearly as valuable as in other sectors of space. But that's the thing, that without a system like Plex, or in this case DAC, something like that, them being able to fund this war that will cost trillions of ISK wouldn't be possible. They wouldn't be able to do that.
Supply and demand. Yeah.
Right. But that's the thing, that's an aspect of emergent gameplay where that exists. You can pull that off because that system exists, where if you didn't have that ability, you couldn't pull this off.
I think that the DAC issue is fairly well summarized in the forums by their responses, and that the summary of the issue can be summarized with, it's not going to be like Eve at first, but we hope to make it like Eve. Eventually. At least
the hope is to make it closer to that model eventually. I mean, they did bring up that was their goal, but that it's a lot more complex to just put that in.
Yeah, and something that kind of, I guess, wasn't really talked about was how this benefits people who aren't even in the transactions, but the people that want to test the game, maybe not really sure on buying it, and having that in there to say, oh, I have a few extra dollars this month, I can buy you one of these, and so you have another month to play. Just the courtesy of the system.
Hey guys, I gotta give an outro. My battery on my tablet's down to 8%.
Fair enough. That's Wilkes Chekhov, folks. He's going to be leaving us here in a moment.
Yeah. So guys, take care. Have a wonderful day, and look forward to Dual Universe being released soon enough.
All right. Have a good one, man. Back to the DAC issue. There were a lot of legitimate concerns about whether it'd be lootable, unlootable, whether that was going to be permanent, if it was catering to a certain type of crowd, whether it set a precedent, whether it was going to make it pay to win. All of these were valid concerns, and all of them have been addressed in some way by their current posting on their open discussion on the threads. Some of it was just clarifications too. Yeah,
I think that the only answer to is it going to be pay to win is it's going to be, can you buy skill points? If you can buy skill points, then I think it becomes pay to win. If you cannot buy skill points, then it's not really pay to win so much as like earn to win or wait to win. Is it wait to win? Because you're waiting on real time to pass before you can get the skill points to move up.
Well, you're also missing the fact that there's no one win. The only win is controlling everybody. And nobody's going to go for that. There will be at least a rebel group that will go say, I don't want to be ruled by you. I'm going to go to my own planet, and we're going to just make our own.
Yeah. Well, I think just human nature in itself is going to lead people to not be one giant, happy, peaceful universe.
Yeah. So there's no definite win. There can't be in this type of system.
But that's what makes it fun. That's what
exactly.
I mean,
it makes it fun. I also kind of wonder about certain aspects of the game. Like, you talked about, can I pay for, skills for instance, and would that make it pay to win? I mean, I've seen other games where you pay for skills, quote unquote, like The Secret World is an MMORPG where you have skills, and you can pay to gain skill points and then spend those skill points. Does that make it pay to win? Not necessarily, because considering that what makes one skill is getting a skill doesn't make it more viable than another skill that you've earned. You can play builds in that game that you've earned, and they're just as viable as the guy that bought all the skills. It's not relevant in the same sense. I'm not sure how skills are going to be relevant in the same sense in this game yet, so I reserve judgment there.
As far as buying skill points, that, like you said, doesn't seem to be a problem. Again, reserve judgment. But someone who goes through the skill tree will have very different constructs than somebody who, if possible, buys an entire tree or entire map. And I'm thinking, at least I'm hoping, there will be at least hundreds of skill points, individual skill points.
Well, they've already shown like some previews of their skill tree, and it seems fairly expansive. I'm not sure if they're going to pare that down any, but right now it seems that it's going to be a fairly expansive skill tree.
Yeah. And plus, skills will give you abilities.
Well, that too. And, well, they've already stated that they don't want it to be exactly like Eve, where in Eve, if I wanted to pilot, let's say, a carrier ship, I was spending a very long time developing the skills necessary just to pilot that ship. And even then, I wouldn't be able to necessarily do it effectively. It would take an even longer time for me to be effective at it. Whereas in here, they want to make it so you can do pretty much anything you want and be effective at it. You may not be the absolute best at it, that somebody has focused on it, but you will be effective in that role if you choose to do it, and you will take a minimum amount of investment.
Time. Yikes. Yeah. They said a lot of the easy to get into, but really hard to perfect. Either it be with skills and the time it takes to learn how to craft whatever element, fly whatever ship, but also building itself. They said they wanted it to be very easy, like Minecraft is, large blocks, very cut and dry, but you can also shrink it down, fine-tune your build, and that's going to be very harder to do to get the right look that you're looking for. And I think games that get that on the spot are games that last a really long time, because there's always more to learn about the game.
I generally, I feel the same way, but a lot of times those types of games where they have that, somebody mentioned had a term for it. It was irreducible complexity. Games that have that irreducible complexity, that produce that kind of depth, a lot of times they don't do as well. Star Wars Galaxy is a classic example of that. Star Wars Galaxies had this really great depth and this, but it also had this really great complexity. It was not easy to master that game, and because of that, they wound up changing it completely how the game played,
to the behest of several of the developers.
Right.
Management. I think this was revealed in years later on, and even Sony, like, didn't Smedley even apologize? Was like, we fucked up. But
right. I mean,
apparently management wanted to make the game more appealing because it was a Star Wars game. It needed to appeal to like kids, and they wanted to make it family friendly and appeal to as many people as possible. And instead, what they got from their attempts at doing that was, well, what it turned into.
They made garbage.
So you're saying it didn't go well because they scaled back?
They tried to draw a bigger audience, and so they tried to reduce the complexity of the game. The game was very complex.
It's
There
not
were
that they scaled back so much in that they fundamentally changed some parts of the game so that it would never be like it was at release. And I mean like they fundamentally changed parts of like how role playing happened, how some of the emergent gameplay was happening. For example, I think one of the biggest things people will remember out of Star Wars Galaxies in the meltdown over the years that it had was that at release, I don't think there were even Jedi in the game at release. I mean, I think that they were planned to come into the game later on. And the way that you would achieve that is you had to skill up in certain things. Every character would have a random set of skills that they were assigned. They wouldn't know what those skills were. And the point of like these target skills is that every character had a specific set of skills that they were going to have to master in order to unlock the ability to become a Jedi. And you had to. It was random for any character. You wouldn't know what skills you had to master, so effectively you were just left with, all right, I'm going to master every single skill. And that took, a lot of time to go through and try to master every single skill in Star Wars Galaxies because there were so many of them and it was a fairly complex skill tree. So it took, I think, the first player like a year. Maybe it was more than a year. Maybe it was like almost 2 years that it took him to actually become a Jedi in the game. No, I think it was like a year. I'm remembering it was like a year, maybe a little over a year. Regardless, it took someone a very long time to become a Jedi in the game, and it wasn't like anybody could just follow the exact same path that he took. So he invested real time into going and becoming a Jedi. Well, as the game evolved, it went from that system, like this, quasi-mysterious system that was rare, so that there were only very few Jedi in the game. And as the years went on, that became a system where you had to go hunt out these crystals in the universe, but people would like map out where the crystals were, so they weren't really that hard to go find. And then they even found that was too difficult for people to actually have to go on a quest to unlock Jedi, that by the time the game reached its later years, you could just go become a Jedi straight from the start. It was a character class straight from the start. And of course, there were tons of Jedis.
Yeah, and it made no sense anymore.
Wow. I really like that first option just because the thing I am scared about in every MMO that I even look at is how long is it going to take me to feel like I'm doing the same crap without getting anywhere?
Well, to be fair, the reason why I brought that up is, and it's a good example that he brought up with the whole Jedi thing, is because I played that game from the beginning and until its very end, sadly. Unfortunately for me, I was one of those people who was like, oh yeah, you can find out you can be a Jedi, and I found out how you become a Jedi. I never was able to master the skill tree well enough on any of my characters to the point where I could become a Jedi before they started introducing the system. I literally took too long to be able to do it the first way they did it. And then they introduced the crystals, the holocron things, and then I was able to get it. So there is a point where you sit there and go, this is so complex, even though it's such a cool idea, that it's almost pointless to have in there. There are so few people, if I wanted to play a Jedi. That was the thing. I wanted to play a Jedi, and they made it so difficult to play a Jedi. If that's all you ever came into the game for, I want to play a Jedi. Well, you were going to be sadly disappointed.
Yeah, that sounds like a one balance to make sure the goals are equal to the challenge. If every 1 in 10 people want to be a Jedi, then it should not be a 1 in 100 difficulty.
Well, they balanced things out later on by having certain things like if you pulled out your lightsaber, you immediately went onto the bounty boards.
Except it wasn't a 1 in 100 difficulty. It was like 1 in 10,000 difficulty.
Yeah. And even then, if I'm a Jedi, back then in the initial, if you became a Jedi, I'm a Jedi. I have a lightsaber. Well, you're screwed half the time because you can't use the weapon.
Even the holocron era was even a decent era because there were still people who would go out and hunt down Jedi.
That was me.
And there's like stories of like how people would go and hunt them down, and like Jedi's how their characters, people would leave them logged in or whatever, and people would go hunt them down wherever they were logged in and idle.
Wow.
Yeah, it made an interesting role playing community, and it drew a certain kind of people to play that game.
I think there was even a mechanic where the Jedi's had to go meditate certain places.
Yes, there was.
And that's kind of reminding me of the meditation mechanic in Worm Online, which is kind of an archaic and confusing one. Worm Online, which also leads into another mechanic that no other game I've ever seen has ever had. Regardless, Worm Online, everybody inhabits the same, I guess, game world in Worm Online, but when you cross the oceans, you actually go into other servers. So that's how they handle multi-server issues. But in Worm Online, there's the prayer and like religion side of Worm Online. And the way that you get skill points in that is that your character has to go pray places in the world. And the world is huge. I mean, it takes hours, it would take me like 8 hours to cross from one side of the continent that I have my character on to the other side of the continent, just walking. And even that may be a low number for how long that journey would take. But you have to go pray in these random places in the world, and it's not really. I mean, the world is so huge that nobody's been to every single place, so it's not really clear where you have to go pray. And some places like are better for you to pray than other places. And like praying on certain tiles that are they can be in the middle of the woods or the middle of the desert for all you know, will give you small bonuses to your religion, and that skill is what allows you to like heal people. You become like a priest in the game, and after a certain point, once you've unlocked these, I don't know what the mechanic is, and I don't think that it's very well documented on how to do it. I don't think it's documented at all. But there is a certain number of skills that you can train up in the game, and it may be random per character on what skills you have to train up. But if you've unlocked everything that you need to, you can unlock the ability to become a god in the game. And like literally, the game developers, only one person has done this in Worm, and the game developers like made a whole in-game religion based around his character. They have their own skill trees now for like how their priests work. And like they're incorporated into the whole religion system. And throughout the game, there's been like discussions, and there's like backstory about this moon, and you can see the moon in the game. It's like, I know, it's not like in Dual Universe where you see a moon and it's actually up there. I mean, there's the texture of the moon going over the planet as it orbits the planet. But the backstory about the moon was that's where the gods lived. And as it turns out, it actually was where the gods lived, because when this guy became a god in the game, like he inhabits the planet now. Like he goes on quests and stuff on the planet, and like has like battles with demons and everything on the planet. And it's certainly a super deep mechanic.
Worm Online was definitely one of those. It's a different game when it's truly player driven. How do you want the story to unfold? Tell us, and
it is not a game for everyone. I mean, like I try to get people into it, and 1 out of 3 people will stay in the game more than a day, and I say 1 out of every 10 people will even play it for a month, and then out of those handful of people, 1 out of every other 10 of those people, so 1 out of 100 people would actually stay in the game and keep playing it. I only made it a couple of months, and then I couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah, it definitely draws a different kind of person. That's true for all games, but
I don't know if anybody else has a game like this, but like Worm for me, I like the idea of thinking about my time in Worm, but it's hard for me to go back to Worm. Like, I know I would just have a sad. I've done it recently, I've just logged
City
in
of
and
Heroes for me.
I walked around the old town we built, and it was like covered in moss, and like the walls were crumbling, and like places had trees overgrowing in them, and like all of our stables were empty, and some of them were the roofs had caved in. It was just weird walking around our old village and like seeing it turn into a ruin. I mean, it was also kind of a cool feeling knowing that like remembering us like living there and like having screenshots and videos of like it being a bustling city with 30 people living there, which is a ton of people in Worm, 30 people to live in one place. But I mean, it was a bustling metropolis for us, and it just kind of fell apart.
Well, 30 people is a lot of people to be living in a city in even bigger games like EverQuest 2. That
Oh,
was a
yeah.
lot of people. If you had 30 people in the city, that was a lot of people. We all have those games. For me, it was City of Heroes. I loved playing City of Heroes, and then I would stop playing and then come back and go, I remember this being a lot funner. Well, I don't remember making a character in the beginning and then having to go through this monotonous grind just to be able to get a travel power. But the community was great.
And then you're like, where's all my friends? And you go and you're like trying to chat with people, and nobody's logged in.
Well, in City of Heroes, I had the exact problem, exact opposite of problem. I had too many friends. It was just one of those things where City of Heroes drew a different kind of crowd. Whereas in a lot of MMOs where, like, if I went to WoW or EverQuest or Terra and all those things, and if I were to say something silly inside, like, global chat on any of those games, I could get a lot of, spite and vitriol thrown my way, by people. It was kind of juvenile. Whereas in City of Heroes, somebody would sit there and calmly tell me, like, this is how things work. Or, I would, could somebody help me with this? And I would have 100 responses in a second. It was a great community. And that's kind of what I want in some respects when I play MMOs, which is kind of weird when I sit there and look at Dual Universe and I have, I want to have this great community, but at the same time, I also want to have the guy that sits there and says, I want to be a pirate and raid your shit.
I think the way that it work in Dual Universe though is that closer to where the new players live is going to be end up going to be the nicer community, because the people who don't want to be around the new players and like aren't going to stay around where they all spawn at. Like, the trolley people I don't think are going to live around where there's more people, where there's more higher populations.
Yeah, plus one of the biggest things about this game is player-driven communities. It's up to the community itself to say, no, we don't like that personality here. We're going to run you out of town.
Yeah, I mean, the community is going to go attack the people that it doesn't want living around them. And which leads me to think, I don't know if Twerk's listening, but are they going to, like, outcast Twerk? Like, is he going to be banished?
Oh, several times. He's going to be that one guy who's just banished from every city. He ends up living in a lean-to off of some tree until he stows away on some spaceship and does it on another planet.
I think Twerk is less of a troll than he lets on.
Yeah, probably. I think most trolls that are trolling now will not be so trolling when they actually step off the Ark ship. Not saying all, but a lot. Maybe not. Maybe 10-20% of people who say they're going to be this giant pirate and do all these bad things to people, that's going to just fade away.
Yeah, for me, people like Twerk are less trolls and more like the guy who wants to be able to do this, but he'll only do. He wants to act like a troll, but he'll only wants to do it with people that are comfortable with him acting like a troll to them. That's how I feel about it anyway. I could be completely wrong, and he may just sit there and message me later and go, "No, you're going down, Wardian."
Yeah, I've had somebody who barely knows anything about the game just say, "No, I'm going to come in and I'm going to be your arch nemesis, and we're going to go to war."
I want to know who's going to reserve the name, like, just the one. Who's going to reserve the one-letter names?
You know what? I'm going to make a new organization. It's going to be the Cybernetics Collective, and we will all have like letter and number designations.
I want the name just A or Z.
Done
I
and
want
done.
I want my name. So when is the reservation? Is that 6,000 backers?
6,000 backers.
Was that the answer to that question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're 700 backers away, give or take. 402,000, by the way, donated right now.
Wow.
It's good. It's good. It's 159 to go.
We might reach it by the end of the week. End of next week. That's what I meant.
Anyways. Well, unless you guys can think of any more topics we should cover this week.
I can think of about a dozen that will take way longer than what we have remaining.
Yeah. It was an exhausting week, and there is a ton of information they just released today. Not even 2 hours ago, so an hour before we went live. The AMA video just went up, so I haven't had the opportunity to watch all of it yet. They just posted a ton of stuff on the forums. There's probably stuff on Twitter and Facebook as well. I haven't had the opportunity to go look, but there's a lot of new news that just even came out just now.
And I feel like they're going to be starting to do a lot more news more frequently. So our job's going to get a lot harder real soon.
Or more fun. I don't know. If they are handling news and it's coming out to the point where enough eyes are just watching that, then I'm fine with us just doing commentary. Before, it was harder because there was so little news that you had to kind of go dig for bits of information. But now that the exposure is much bigger, I think that we can focus more on just relaxing and talking about the game.
Makes sense, yeah. Sounds fun. Fun times ahead.
Cool. All right. Well, does anybody else have anything else they want to cover? Nothing?
I do not.
Nope.
All right. Oh, I guess I will take the opportunity to advertise another game. A lot of people, I've been trying to get a lot of people to play this game. I've been giving away keys left and right for Hack Mud. If you like coding, if the reason you're into Dual Universe, or part of the reason, is to be a scripter, or you want to do some programming, I think Hack Mud is going to be a game that might appeal to you. It's a lot of it is JavaScript driven. The idea is that it's a MUD, so it's a text-based game, and you are writing scripts to attack other players and also attack organizations and try to break through firewalls, etc., etc. It's not like these firewalls are, quote, hard. They're all puzzles, but you're trying to script everything to make it easier so you can beat the timer that you're on for any time you attack somebody. The game starts out with a single-player world. It's a text world, or text-based game world, like it's a MUD. And you're trying to, quote, break out of a VLAN, a private network. And basically you're learning the mechanics of the game. You're learning like some puzzle solving. You've learned all these basic commands on how to do things and how to play the game safely without getting scammed. And then you are dropped into the multiplayer world. And the multiplayer world is just massive. There's just so much really to absorb when you think about it. The game is so new that there's not a whole lot of player content yet, but you can see where the potential is. Like, there's a huge amount of just insane things that people are going to be able to do here.
That sounds great for the people that can type.
It's a sandbox game. I don't know any other way to describe it. It's a sandbox network for writing code on, and I mean, you can write so much with the code. You can even access like a Mongo database on the back end to like put databases into and tables into to store information, like make your own bank account or run your own bank in this virtual world.
Wow, that's deep. Well, while you're plugging that, I'd like to also let know the community that there is a alpha and beta tester specific organization that was made, and they have a Discord channel and a organization page on the site itself called Alpha Academy.
Alpha Academy.
Yep.
They have a big A, right? Alpha Academy.
It's a big gear.
Big gear.
Yeah.
Cool. You guys hoping to be like Eve University?
I am not educated.
Eve University was a player organization that their whole focus was teaching people how to play the game. So they would bring in new players. In fact, one of the requirements was that you didn't have a lot of skill points on your character. So they would only bring in new players, and they would teach them like the basics of the game. They would teach them mining and how to play with fleets, and give them some different avenues on what they could go do in the long term of the game. And hopefully, by the time you left Eve University, you were even placed into like your own organization, or you could join an organization, so that really you weren't like just left on your own in the world. Like it was a good way for them to like introduce you and then get you your first job in the game, and for you to go do what you wanted.
I used to recruit a lot of people straight out of Eve University.
Wow. I think it will get to that point, or at least I hope it will get to that point after launch, but for alpha and beta, it's just a community to help bug test and give good, accurate feedback to the developers. So it's a group to bug test and document and do science.
Fair enough.
Because it's not science until you write stuff down.
Well, with that long silence, I think it's time to wrap up.
Long pauses generally mean that, yes.
All right. Well, hopefully next week we'll have a better idea of what we're going to do in this new news-heavy situation.
Yes, we'll probably have a lot more feedback on those particular forum threads. Much more to discuss. More people to discuss it with.
And more hype.
All right. Well, that's it for episode 13. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. I guess you guys can catch us next week. Same time, same place.